Hi there, I'm Tim Irvin.
And I'm Stacy Irvin. Welcome to the Totum Wellness Podcast.
We'd like to welcome Nikki Fraser back to the podcast. Welcome back, Nikki.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back.
Last time we talked about the 3 assessment essentials. So 3 things that everybody should assess. I think we snuck in a 4th one there as well, but that's all right. And today, what we're going to be talking about are 3 things that people probably don't know about strength training. At least not all 3 of them, or 4, whatever it may be. But Nikki, you've been at this for a while now. You're 20 plus years in the fitness business, personal training, group training. You started at Loom Women in Health the last time that we spoke. I think you just started there. So I would like to hear about how that's going. And master's degrees. I confirmed that 2 master's degrees is better than 1 PhD. I had to do some research on it.
I'm still gunning for a PhD, though. It's not too late.
Okay.
It's never too late. It's never too late.
Obviously in health psychology and then in kinesiology as well. Lover of sports. And I know you guys see each other in the ravine all the time too,
Yes,
right?
We do. We
Yeah.
love outdoor nature time.
Yeah. Nature time is really important
It's
for all
super
of us.
important.
Super important.
Yeah.
For my mental health.
And mine.
And those around us.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Dog? You have a dog?
2 dogs. Yeah.
2 dogs.
Same as you guys, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Dog lovers. Wow.
Yes.
No
Oh,
wonder
yeah.
you 2 get along
Yeah,
so
we're
well.
Yeah.
like
totally.
soulmates
with
our dogs in our ravine time.
All right. So let's start things off. Things that people don't know about strength training. Do you have one that comes to mind first?
A statement from the American Heart Association in 2023, they put out that actually I was surprised when I first read it, that strength training does actually improve your cardiovascular risk. Now you think about it, of course, that makes sense. For example, if we have more muscle, you have more mitochondria, we have better aerobic metabolism because we have more muscle. So it makes sense, really. So, but it's great that they put a statement out because I think resistance training historically, and now it's finally getting its due. And I'm sure things are always cyclical in science, and it's really important because we've been such a cardio society, and which is great. I'm a little bit saddened when there's people who are making these hard lines like ditch the cardio, do resistance, like. Movement is movement, and it's positive no matter what you're doing. But it is truly essential to be performing resistance training every week, and you can include. But now that we know that it has positive cardiovascular effects, if you really enjoy strength training and you super hate doing the cardio piece, well, you're still getting a benefit you're still getting heart benefits. So,
and I think it was a really simple example. As soon as you said that, I'm like, stair climbing, right? So I'm talking about actual stairs. So we in our personal training business, we all have used step ups, right? So they could be with dumbbells or without dumbbells, but stepping up onto some sort of riser could be a foot and a half, 2 feet, but a step up. So that is a strength move. If you are walking up the stairs, you are doing a series of step-ups. So you are, by definition, strength training in that regard. If you think about you do 2-3 flights of stairs, what happens when you get to the top of the 3rd flight?
Yeah.
You're puffing. So there's a cardio benefit just from that type of strength training activity that people tend to lose sight of. So if you're doing something hard in the gym, you are going to puff hard afterwards. And obviously there's a cardiovascular benefit.
I think this is an interesting point. And with so many things in wellness and health, we've all seen people take it to like a really dumb extreme. And when this first came out, I heard from so many gym guys, I don't have to do cardio. My cardio is fine. And I think it's part of our industry. It's part of what we have talked about, is that when you look at the headline of the research and then you make an assumption, years ago we had people eating steak for breakfast every single day because it was the headline of something, right? Like protein in the morning. And then a bunch of people interpreted it that I can have steak every morning.
Right.
I think that this is very interesting. I think when we look at Alzheimer's research and when we look at brain health as we are trying to figure out how to age as best we can and how to enhance our longevity, and this is going to become more and more of an issue, I do love looking at it from more of a physiological standpoint, is vasodilation.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the more we have vasodilation, that is really good for the elasticity of our arteries, no matter where they are in our body, whether it's in our heart, whether it's in our brain, whether it's in our muscles. We want that to happen regularly. And that's what movement does.
Yeah.
And we're always trying to be as efficient as possible. So I do love that we have this out there. I just want to encourage people that the cardio piece of moving is also great, but to me that's social. We talked about our ravine time and how important that is to our life. We would never replace that with weights because you can't.
No.
And we wouldn't get the same benefit of being in the ravine with our dogs as we would being in a weight room throwing weights around.
Yeah.
So it's not a one or the other. But for those people who love weights, know that weights are great for your heart.
Yeah.
I love it.
This is really interesting to me. So I find, like, before I went back to school, I've always been a very curious person, and I've always assumed that science had the answers. And I thought because there was basically a 20-year gap between my master's programs, I thought I had just lost the ability to actually find the information and think critically when I'm reading papers, and which truly I wasn't reading a lot of anyway, because I just didn't have the time. I wasn't in that space, even though I really like it. Anyway, I always have a lot of questions, and I find I would Google things. Like, for example, when I was pregnant, I wanted to know how intense can I work out? Surely it's
Big
out
question.
there.
Yeah.
And now I know it. No, we don't know because of all certain reasons for that. But that's why I couldn't find the information. And so I've always
Googled the same thing.
Right? I wish we'd known each other.
Yeah.
So, like, fast forward to now I know a lot more. I know how to find answers, which is phenomenal. And when we look at the Canadian movement guidelines, so if I were a general population person, I'd say, okay, what are the Canadian guidelines? What are they telling me to, like, how are they telling me to move? And those guidelines are definitely influenced by behavioral thinking, because we don't want to give guidelines to people that are suddenly seem so overwhelming they're not going to do it at all, which makes sense, right? So that 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity throughout the week, really, like, folks, that's not a lot of work. But for some people, that's massive. And so the language about how those guidelines are put out is to try to throw a really big net so we're not scaring people off from moving at all. So now we're looking at the resistance training exercise guidelines, and it's super vague. And again, it's probably because they don't want to scare people off and say, well, I can't do that, or I don't have access to that, or whatever. It's a pretty big ball of wax. So if I recall correctly, it says something like, do 2 sessions of muscular resistance training. I'm not getting the words right, but a week. Like, that's so vague. So what does that mean, right?
And it's different for everybody.
It's exactly. It is different for everybody. So, so then I was doing some research to make sure I could speak intelligently here, and researchers we're always looking sometimes, like, what is the absolute minimum, because our population health is so poor, and it sadly continues to decrease. So we're trying to figure out ways, like, how are we going to get the population to be healthy? And what's the absolute minimum dosage of cardiovascular work we need to do, resistance training, like what movement, what's the minimum? These researchers showed that if you're working a muscle group 4 sets per week, it's kind of the minimum amount of work you want to do.
Okay.
They didn't, as I recall, I don't remember the reps or if it was even in there. So again, like, there's a piece of information that's missing.
Yeah. And I think that we know enough that we can speak to that, is that there are the general guidelines. We talk about 2 reps in reserve.
Yeah.
And so that you're kind of under 10
Yes.
maybe.
Yeah.
So let's use our research brains and our experience and say that if you're wanting to build lean body mass along with strength, you need a minimum of 4 sets a week, and it probably needs to be heavy enough that when you're approaching 10, you only have 2 reps in reserve.
Yeah, even if you're approaching like 6.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then you could go down from there.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, and I
On
think
average.
on average, and I think above 10, a little bit is okay. But if you're around the 20 reps, you're more into muscle endurance or what we would normally refer to as that.
Can I give a recent real world example of this? I was talking to my sister Barb on the weekend, and she's been doing this workout program. She's trying to influence her bone mineral density, her muscle mass, stay strong, get stronger, those sorts of things. So she's been doing squats and down to, I think she said 16-inch depth, and it's a consistent depth. So that all sounds great. 3 sets. Are you tired at the end of the 3rd set? Yeah. How many more do you think you could do? I don't know. And so I asked her to do on the 3rd set, max it out.
Yeah.
Not to the point where you might fall over and hurt yourself or anything like that, but like that sort of 2 reps in reserve. Like, could I do one more? Maybe.
Yeah.
Sort of idea. So she did 23 reps on her 3rd set.
You're like, add some weight, sister.
That's exactly what I said. Is it time to add some weight. Yeah. So first off, great job.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things that people don't generally know is like how much, like it feels kind of tiring.
Yeah.
But what does that mean?
Yeah.
And if you're going to stimulate strength training, then you have to get pretty damn tired. Like, I can't do much more. And the best would be each set, you fall into that pattern. But if you really don't like that discomfort and it's going to make you stop doing it altogether, then do it once. 1 set. Do 3 sets, and on your 3rd set, make yourself feel like, glad I'm done that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like it's also dependent too, right? So if we have people who are well trained and knowledgeable, we know what 2 reps in reserve feels like. But for a lot of people, if you're just starting resistance training, even if you're an endurance athlete or if you've been an active person in sports your entire life, and now okay, I should probably be doing some resistance training on top of all the things I love to do. You still have to build up that intelligence of what that feels like in your body. So I always recommend when people are starting out, like, go ahead and do those 3x10s. Do the generic piece, move well, move safely within your range of motion. And then once you know how things feel and you feel confident with the way you're moving, then you can start to add some weight. Then you can start manipulating those repetitions that you're doing and the sets, and we can talk about recovery time and why that's important. And it's important for people to practice that and get to know their bodies first, right?
Yeah, and the one caveat is you have to build up the base first. So if somebody's listening and they're detrained, right? So they haven't been strength training, you shouldn't jump into pushing 3 sets to near failure 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
You should do sort of 60 to 70% of that for 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Let your body adapt, because we see it all the time. People jump in. There's many businesses out there that are fitness businesses, class-based, where it's just way too intense. Somebody just starts, and like these are young people, 25-year-olds getting
turned
hurt.
Off. No one's watching you.
No coaching.
Yeah. So
not to name any names.
That base training is really important.
Yeah.
And oftentimes missed, and it almost always leads to injury.
Yeah.
That's an interesting piece. And all of us trained as athletes, and we understand it. And
I did not train as an athlete.
Well, I think that you did. In my mind, you did. So there's information overload in this space for sure. But I do think that when you have a ton of experience with it, or a lifetime experience, it's very easy for us to read an article and be like, okay, that part I could take away. That part is total garbage. or to go look at a class and sometimes be like, oh my God, this is the craziest class I've ever seen. All these people are going to get injured. Or to say, okay, I like what they're doing here. They're going to get results. They're encouraging people. They're being nice to people, which we'll talk a little bit about that too. But as an athlete, when we're training athletes, we have a whole period of time called base training. And base training is exactly what Tim was just talking about. It's body weight movement. It goes on for, 6 weeks, potentially ish, a month, 6 weeks. In some sports, it goes on for 8 weeks. And that's where we learn the movements. That's where we become great movers. And that's where we become comfortable. And the other thing that kind of I thought of when we were talking about this 2 reps in reserve is that if you are just starting into a weight program, there's a whole neuromuscular component that will go on that has nothing to do with building lean body mass. It's your body quickly, efficiently figuring out how's the easiest way for me to lift this heavy weight. And it happens. And we all know it happens. And that's the interesting thing with personal training is you could have a client where you saw them for the first time in the first 2 weeks, you're going to see their weights jump significantly. Did they build any lean body mass? Absolutely not. They figured out the lift. Their brain figured out how to do it. And I think that's a factor that if you're not working in this industry, you might not know that. And all this talk about 2 rep max and all that is really a waste of people's time.
Yeah.
When you're a beginner. When you're a beginner, to me, it's learn the movement, learn a squat, learn a push, learn a pull, learn about your body and your muscles and how they work.
Yeah.
And then do some movements, get into your actual strength training in 3 to 4 weeks after you spend that time. Does that sound right to you? Does that make sense?
I think so, for sure. My mind just went into a whole bunch of different places. But yeah, no, I think that makes really good sense because we need to make sure that we're moving safely and we're moving well, and then we can add on to that. And yeah, I feel like I wanted to be here to cut out the noise, and I feel like I'm just adding to it because there's always that caveat of like, it depends, like, what are your goals, right? And so I guess when we're talking about it here, we're really mostly talking about a general population of people who are trying to get into it, get into strength training. And I wanted to, as you said about people who are starting to jump into it and not to jump into quickly or too heavily or, move intensely. Yeah. But I feel like even people who have, they've taken a break because of injury or the season is different or whatever, and then they go back because it's winter time right now. This happens every year. I go skiing and we're, whoever, people are like, oh, my legs are burning. And I'm like, okay, well, you haven't been in this movement now since, for 8 months. And now you're going to go out and ski two full days. And you're wondering why you're so sore. Like, it's even those movements, like, let's put even resistance training aside, but anything we forget, even if we're, intelligent adults, like, okay, well, you weren't doing that for a while. Like, just come in like a little percentage below, right? Which is hard for a lot of us. So and I think it's hard in like society just like pushes all this stuff at you and says you have to. And you're probably noticing this with lots of the women that you work with. It's like, when the hell would I have to do that? And how would I do that? And how would I fit it all in? And why are you telling me all these things at the same time? Yeah.
And I think that our goal is to say, get the right information and get the right person. And maybe that is, Tim's sister has the luxury of calling him and getting the right information.
Everybody can call me.
Everybody gets to call you.
1-555.
So I do think that even though there's a lot of information, we find it exciting because you know what? Finally, it's the right information. Finally.
For sure.
Finally.
Yeah.
There were so many, when we were younger, there were so many diets and so many weird ways to look a certain way.
Mhm.
We are finally talking about these awesome things. Build lean body mass. Don't worry about your weight on the scale.
Yeah.
Think about your health. Think about your movement. Think about how that feels to you. Do things that are fun. And that's maybe like your type 2 cardio. But we've known this for years. Longevity is directly related to muscle mass and lean body mass. And how you feel when you're 80 and 90 and 100 is really directly linked to that. So if you want to feel good in those ages, I think there's no ignoring this information.
No, for sure. Yeah.
For this second point then, so we're talking about intensity. So you had mentioned those very vague guidelines. Is there something more specific that we should be telling these listeners right now?
So if you're starting out, and even that would be if I'm saying 4 sets per muscle group, like somebody might be like, what is that? That's not helpful. So for example, if you're just starting out, you have no idea even what that means, then you want to be able, if muscle group meaning like maybe your quadriceps, your thighs, right? So if you're doing 4 sets of squats throughout the week, let's say to 10, if you're starting 10 repetitions, then there you go. And not only have you utilized your quadriceps, you've utilized your glutes and you've utilized hamstrings. Like it's a nice full body movement because we're using a bunch of different joints. And then you can also add in some push-ups because now we're getting the upper body incorporated. You can do a push-up. You can do it against a wall, standing up. You can do it with your hands elevated on a couch. If that's too difficult to do on the floor, you can do it, put it on your knees, like on your knees doing the push-ups. Or if you're so amazing at doing the push-ups and you can get to like 23 or 50 or whatever, elevate your feet, like make it more difficult. You can put a weighted plate on your back safely, everybody. Don't try it unless you're well trained. But there's so many ways to perform a movement and modify it. And I really want to get away from people saying that's cheating or that's the easy way or God forbid we use the term. You know what? I'm not even going to say it because I'm done with it.
Know.
And so that like when I'm coaching my outdoor fitness classes and we are having that kind of language, I'm like, no, it's a modification. And whether we're modifying to make it harder or we're modifying it to make it easier, because that's where you're at today, just be okay with that. That's great. And move within where you're at, be consistent, that's a massive piece is just continue to be consistent and work with it and progress slowly. And then we start to see the changes. Did I answer? I went totally on a tangent.
Oh, it's great. That's a great answer.
Yeah, I think so. For people who are maybe either deconditioned or just starting out, 4 sets of 10 to 15 repetitions per week per muscle group.
Yeah.
And then for people who are more experienced, I think we can speak to our own experience with this, is I would say at least 2 times a week, 3 sets, 10 to 15 repetitions to a 8 out of 10 intensity level. That's fair to say. That's sort of minimum 2 times per week.
And then try to hit all your body parts and your big muscles.
Yeah.
Like try to do, I think that has not entered many of these conversations yet, is try to do compound exercises as opposed to bodybuilding exercises.
Yeah.
So to explain that is your squats and your push-ups and exercises that are using multiple muscle groups with one exercise, as opposed to potentially sitting on a machine and just doing your quads or just doing your hamstrings or just doing your shoulders. We want to be efficient and imitate movements of our everyday life. Yeah. Pushes,
or
pulls,
your sport.
Or your sport. Of course, your sport. Yes. So sometimes for the golfers out there, we're going to do twisting movements, those types of things. So I think that's a great guideline. There was another note that you talked about that actually changed my workout this morning. So this was
excited.
Fun. I know. And it was the concept of power and developing power. And when you get older, to me, that's the most daunting one because it doesn't I'm going to speak for myself. It doesn't feel good.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, so we have these teenagers
But
who
you're a sprinter.
are, yeah, okay. This is a very funny example. We have these athletes in our family that are much better and bigger and stronger than me at everything. And my 16-year-old and I, we were at a hotel somewhere, and I said, "Oh, we should try to jump and hit that sign." And so I go to do it, and I can hear Tim burst out laughing like behind me, like that it was actually looked that pathetic. And I used to be a high jumper, and I actually thought, like, because I was like, I know the technique, I know I can do it.
Yeah.
I have a very different body than I did when I was a high jumper. And so it was sad and whatever. But
you haven't been training that.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Okay. So what did I add to my lift today? I just to emphasize how simple this could be. I did my usual stuff. I did my squats. I did some lunges. I did some chest press. I didn't have a lot of time. Then I added single foot hops. And then I added squat jumps.
Amazing.
And then I think I did like hops to a step.
Did you touch the ceiling in the basement?
Oh my God, my head almost. We have a very low basement.
She's got such a great vertical.
I was scared.
To be fair, my head hits the ceiling.
I'm
when
going
I
to concuss myself. I was a little worried. So yes, I was aware of that. Meaning I jumped very low, but I jumped. Okay, so explain to us why we might want to incorporate power into our workouts.
So, but I just want to backtrack for 1 second. When we were talking about the 4 sets and we're talking about general population and not having enough time, and muscular power is the same thing. So this applies to both the strength and power. If you have a person who's already working out a lot, and I'm around a lot of triathletes, I sometimes do triathlon. It's a lot of training in a week.
It's a lot of hours.
It's a ton. You have to be out there to be able to finish the race, right? Never mind podium.
You have to put the hours in.
Yeah. So they don't have time for strength training necessarily, or they don't want to. Yeah. So even that, like this research here saying like, just try, like hit those 4 sets of muscle groups.
Yes.
And at least you're doing something, right?
Yes.
So it works for everybody, even for people who are not doing sedentary, like just starting out, or people are already doing a lot of work. So it's good news for everybody, kind of knowing where that minimum dose is. Anyway, so and same thing goes for muscular power. So everything, what I love about it is that you don't have to change what you're doing already. So I'm going to speak as if we're already active. Let's say you're a swimmer. And you can introduce muscular power by power is just speed times velocity. So you're moving something, a weight, through space quickly. That's it.
Right.
So it could be your body, it could be a dumbbell, it could be a sled, it could be literally anything. You could be skipping. And the reason why it's important for us to be training our muscular power is one of the things that we lose our type 2 muscle fibers, which is responsible for our explosive movements. We lose those faster than we lose type 1 fibers. And anyway, there's a lot of interesting things that happen with the motor neurons and how they start to the type 2 motor neurons will start to innervate the type 1 muscle fibers if we're not maintaining the power. So power obviously is important in sport. But it's also important as we're aging because it is related to rate of force development. So if you're tripping and you want to catch yourself, you need to have a little bit of muscular power in order to move quickly and catch yourself. And we're also, let's hope we're all going to be active until we take our last breath. So we're all doing activities that require us to be we're going fast at something. If you're skiing, you're going fast. Gravity's helping you out with that. You better be able to react quickly and have the muscular power to catch yourself when you hit all the different terrain that you're hitting, or you're cycling and you're hitting the bumpy roads. Like you have to have some power there, not just strength. Right. You have to be able to move quickly. Yeah.
I remember reading recently, like I would say within the last couple of months, about tennis. For people who are older, being one of the best sports for power maintenance or improvement,
Right.
because
you have to move fast.
it's let's call it a safe change of direction sport.
Yeah.
So you got to run to the forehand side, then you got to run to the backhand side.
Yeah.
You got to stop. You got to get back to the center,
Yep.
move up, move back. So you're all these different ways of moving, which I love because it's just not forward running,
Yeah.
right? So you have that change of direction is muscular power.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
better you are at that, the better you are at
Yeah.
not falling when you trip
Yeah.
on a crack or something like that.
Yeah. And it's actually super fun also. Like it feels powerful to train with power. And I understand that if you're an unconditioned person and you're new to fitness, it could probably be really scary and super uncomfortable. It's not a comfortable feeling. It's very uncomfortable, but it's also, if you can wrap your head around it, it's really fun. Like you can really, that's one of the reasons why I went back to school. I'm like, how do I make sure that I'm training people safely in this way? Because it's how I love to do that kind of movement. And I was like, well, it's not dangerous for me. How do I make sure I'm keeping everybody else safe? And as it turns out, it's really important that we're still doing that. So yay. But so let's say, for example, how do we include this in our training? So if you just love to do strength training, that's your jam, you're not going to do any cardio, fine. But you can include muscular power within your sets. So what I would recommend, for example, if you've got it doing a bench press, so you do a proper warm up. Always do your proper warm up before you're doing anything intense, because training for muscular power is an intense feeling. It's intense for your body. So you do a warm up. Let's say you do your bench press with 50% of your weight, and that's something like, again, like I don't want to scare people with percentages or anything like that, but just something that you can really easily move and you're getting the range of motion, fine. Now, if you already know what sort of weight you put on there for getting to your 4 repetitions and you're leaving 1 in reserve, so you know what that means for strength, or let's say you're getting up to 6, you want to take off more weight. So if you're training for power, you have to take off more weight because you're moving quicker. So in this case, where we've got bench press already scheduled into our routine, now we've warmed up. So now we're going to do a set of 3, maybe 4 repetitions and go up to 6 for power. And as long as you're doing good form, or you're feeling safe in that good form, you move the bar fast, move it really fast. And then there's also cool technology you can put on the barbell, but that's another, you don't have to have the technology, but you can nerd out there if you want to. But and then you can move the bar really quickly and do 4 sets of that. Make sure you leave a minimum of 2 minutes in between each of those sets, and you've trained for muscular power. You can go on with doing the rest of your workout.
Well, it's interesting that the physical feeling of training for power is much different than training for strength or hypertrophy. It doesn't feel like I'm gassed, right? Like you might finish that set of 4 to 6 reps of power and not be able to move the bar very well, but you're not going to feel like, oh, the burn and that sort of thing.
It is. Yeah. It is.
And then you
feeling.
need, if you're going to be good at training for power, you have to have a good amount of rest for your neuromuscular system. It's not about replenishing that energy within the muscle. It's the neuromuscular system that has to recover.
Yeah. And totally. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to hit that next set with the same intensity. So for sure, a 2 minute. But even, so speaking of feeling gassed, so if you're not weight training, or if you're swimming or you're cycling or whatever, you can also in sprinting. And here's a perfect example, which I'll just use personally. So I like to swim, I like to cycle, I like to run. Running is probably my least efficient sport. And I like sprinting a lot, but for whatever reason, my leg muscles don't like it. In that I just pull something. Like it's so easy for me to injure myself when I'm sprinting. So I don't do it on land. Like I will once in a while, and then I pay for it. But it doesn't mean I can't move, like I can't train. I can't do sprint or high interval training. I'll do it safely on my bike or in the pool. And on the bike, anybody or even like hill walking.
Yeah.
So on the bike, you can, there's a lot of different ways you can do muscular power, but let's say super easy, 20 seconds on, this is the paper, the Canadian researchers, they showed that if you did 20 seconds, and I was surprised, it was 20 seconds on, 2-minute reserve. So 20 seconds, you're at your high intensity. So if 10 is 10 is your highest, you can only do that activity for 10 seconds. You want to be at around an 8 or 9. So you can do it for a little bit longer than 10 seconds. Okay. So I'm going to spin super fast. I've already warmed up. I'm going to spin super fast for 20 seconds at my highest, like 8 or 9. I can maybe like get out a few words, but certainly not having a conversation. And then I'm going to rest for 2 minutes. I'm going to repeat that 2 times. You actually have results. That's it.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Great.
That's what is that? 2, 4, 6, like 7 minutes?
Yeah.
Like,
That's
it's like
great.
nothing,
Oh,
right?
it's wonderful.
So,
it's
yeah.
a good way to break it down. And I think for all of our listeners, that's going to be super helpful. We love the attack bike for that.
Oh yeah.
Purpose.
Oh yeah. That's brutal and
It's-
fun.
Yeah. Like it's
Yeah.
great because it's short. And we
Yeah.
also have, for people with knee, hip issues, we love to use the Nordic, it's the skier.
Here.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
That's a great one
Yeah.
too. And then Tim and I have both tried to add back in more sprinting, and whew, it's hard.
yeah.
It is hard, but so good.
Yeah.
It does build, you
For
know.
sure.
And I think that the key is to the nice thing about sprinting is it's no equipment. You can do it anywhere. It's just find a flat surface. You've got to be really warmed up. And then I wouldn't necessarily go full out the first few times,
No.
right? Like I
No,
would
no,
just,
no.
I would just build to it, but
Yeah.
think like 30 meters,
Yeah.
and then maybe extend it to 50 meters. It is surprising when you go back to it as an older adult, how different it feels to what it used to feel
Yeah.
like when you were young. But that shouldn't deter anyone. You can build it back, and you can
For
get
sure.
back to great
Smartly.
sprinting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is a great way to work out.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable. Though
It's time efficient.
time efficient.
I
it's
love the
fun.
recovery. Like that's when
Yeah.
it is my favorite
Me
because
too.
I like to have that recovery time to just like
I
chill
love it.
and then I hit it hard again.
I love it.
So, and
I love that
also
style of
it has
working
a
out.
massive improvement on your VO2 max
Right.
as well. So it has a
Exactly.
huge effect. And it also creates lactate, which is an incredible fuel for our bodies. It is a preferred fuel source for our brain. So I think it's imperative to be utilizing that kind of movement
Yeah.
every week.
Is
for
that what
sure.
Stacy means when she says my brain's not functioning properly? I just need some
You just need
lactate?
to do some sprinting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. So I can leave the house then.
Yeah. But maybe I should also say, like I was talking about, go really intense at, RP at an 8 or 9. You can still, if you're new to that, that's super scary. So I apologize. But if you're new to including muscular power, then be at that, like that 7
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
feel
get
okay with
comfortable
that.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still hard. If
Yeah.
you're walking up a hill and you're feeling like,
Yeah.
oh, I can barely keep a conversation, you're around 7.
Yeah.
So do some hill repeats, that sort
Yeah.
of thing. So everyone can start somewhere.
That is exactly what I do too when I see you in the ravine. I run up the hills.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some days it's really pathetic, but it's super hard. And I can maybe hit 20 seconds before I have to stop.
Yeah.
But that's great.
Yeah.
And it's, and I have the dogs pulling me in all directions and being annoying, but it's a way that I've mixed it in with my type 2 and it fits in my schedule. I have to walk them anyhow. I might as well run them halfway up a hill. Who cares? Right.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
so I think that that's a good way to fit it in. You touched on something that is interesting, that you find those workouts fun. I find them fun. The general public probably doesn't find it fun at all. But I do think that it's a topic that is so important, is that when we have all these wellness experts and coaches, and you coach young people and I coach young people, and I swear that my number one thing going into practice is I have teenagers. I'm like, how do I make this fun for them?
Yeah.
And we all know from doing sports that the number one reason you do them and the number one reason you excel at them is because you love it so much. And in order to love it, it has to be fun for you.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think sometimes we move away from that and we forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you say would be your top? I know that you think about this because I see you with your group of women and I know that you're always having fun. What would be your top way to have fun with some of this?
When I'm teaching a class or
anytime?
Yeah, that is actually really, I think you have to find movement that you enjoy. And so sadly, I think a lot of people had poor experiences growing up through school system and phys ed and and I have to say, like, my experience wasn't fantastic. No offense to my gym teachers. They were probably super nice people, but it wasn't like, it wasn't fun. And so I would really encourage people that if they say like, I don't like exercising, I don't like that, or I don't, whatever. I know that there's a movement or there's an activity or something that everybody will find that they enjoy, because movement does bring, like it brings enjoyment. You feel better. There's a whole bunch of other physiological things that happen, we know. So I would really encourage people to try new things. And there's like thousands, millions of videos on YouTube that you can look for free. So whether it's Tai Chi, or it's curling, or it's you want to try snowboarding, you're 55, like I'm telling you, it's going to be rough, but but do it. Like just jump in, and then find your people, because I think that's the other thing too, is depending on what your background is and what your experience has been with movement. Like maybe you were part of a phys ed that people made fun of you, or you were never thought of as an athlete, and so you never think of yourself as an athlete. And there's a lot of negative talk that happens up here, and I hope that everybody can really understand that. Like, I really truly believe that there's a movement that people can find that will be enjoyable for them. And if you're lucky enough to find other people who like to do that, great. Like the world's a pretty big place, especially now with the the internet. We have you can find groups everywhere, and and if you don't like working with other people, that's okay too. Like there's so many different ways to move.
Podcasts, lots of people like to do that. Go out and listen to something or learn something while they're while they're moving.
Temptation bundling. That's where you're getting at, making it fun. So that's there are a lot of different behavioral techniques you can use to make things fun. So I definitely use this for myself. If I don't feel super motivated, but I know that it's going to be better if I sit on my bike and I'll watch Netflix and ride my bike.
Sure.
If I'm not dialed into my performance a few times, like who cares? I just need to move my body. It's fine. Or working out with a buddy and finding the group of people that you that you just feel good about moving with. I think that's really important. Find the fun for sure, and be consistent with it.
That's a great spot to stop. Thank you very much. I think that these are all really great education tips for our listeners. Most people won't know the three of them-ish, 4 of them-ish. So we got to maybe
find the fun. I like that.
Find the fun.
My favorite.
Yeah, maybe we'll stop saying it's 3 things, and it's just however many we come up with.
Find the fun. We got a lot of stuff.
Nikki, thanks again for coming. It's
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Totum Wellness Podcast. Please follow us on Apple, Google, or Spotify, and leave a 5-star review and comment. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, and please spread the word to family and friends.